Now, let's continue with clauses. There's a name for groups of words with subjects and verbs. We call them clauses. Sometimes the clauses don't make complete sense, so we call them dependent clauses because they depend on other words to complete their thought. Sometimes they make sense by themselves, so we call them independent clauses or complete sentences. Here are some examples of what I just mentioned. An independent clause. The boy ran into the woods. Notice that this group of words has a subject, the boy, and a predicate, ran into the woods. It makes sense by itself. And so we call it a sentence or an independent clause. What's a dependent clause? Take a look at this. Because the boy ran into the woods. This group of words still has a subject and a verb. Boy ran. But it needs more information to complete the thought. It cannot stand alone as a sentence. Now perhaps we can make this sentence complete by adding the clause, he got lost. So the sentence would read, because the boy ran into the woods, he got lost. Notice how these words became a complete sentence when we added the independent clause, he got lost. Now let's take some time and turn each of the dependent clauses into complete sentences by adding an independent clause and a period. After you've done this, you can resume the video and take a look at my answers. All right, take a moment and get this done. Okay, you're back. Because I felt sick, how did you complete that? Well, I said, because I felt sick, I did not go to school. The next one, although he was my best friend. How did you complete that? I said, although he was my best friend, I didn't invite him to my party. Number 3, because she loved him, she called him all day and all night. Number 4, although he fell off his bike, he didn't get hurt. Now, what's interesting is these are dependent clauses. But what would happen if we remove the first word from each of these incomplete thoughts? What if I remove the word because? Well, you see now, the sentence would say, I felt sick. Right away, it becomes an independent clause or a complete sentence. Let's remove although. Although he was my best friend, I take although away, and what do I have left? He was my best friend. That is also an independent clause or a sentence. What if I remove the word because? Now I have she loved him. And that makes complete sense, and it becomes an independent clause or a complete sentence. Although, let's remove that. So now I have he fell off his bike. And that's an independent clause or a complete sentence. When I remove these first words, these groups of words change from becoming dependent clauses to independent clauses. And you see, these are words that we call subordinating conjunctions because they turn an independent clause into a dependent clause. I felt sick. I was doing fine when I just wrote that. Once I added because, now it becomes a dependent clause. The sentence was, he was my best friend. Now I added although, and now it's a dependent clause. She loved him. That was fine by itself, but when I added because, now it becomes a dependent clause. I had a complete sentence here. He fell off his bike. But then I added although, and it became a dependent clause. These words that create dependent clauses are called subordinating conjunctions. What are they called? Subordinating conjunctions. Let's say it slowly. It's a fancy word. Let's say it slowly. Subordinating conjunction. These subordinating conjunctions, as they're called, subordinating conjunctions can turn any independent clause into a dependent clause. All you've got to do is put them at the beginning of the sentence, and the sentence will lose its independence. Now, you saw some of them in the last section. Let's look at them again. Here's a list of subordinating conjunctions once again. Look for them in sentences. When they appear at the beginning of a group of words, they make those words become a dependent clause. Be careful. Sometimes these dependent clauses are so desperate to become sentences that they try to pass themselves off as complete sentences. But they are really just fragments, broken pieces of thought that are dependent on another group of words to make complete sense. Take a look at these subordinating conjunctions once again, and we know that they can create clauses that act as adjectives or adverbs. They answer the questions that adjectives and adverbs answer. So let's remember, if the group of words is a sentence, then it can also be called an independent clause. A clause is another name for a group of words with a subject and a verb. Some clauses are independent. They make complete sense by themselves. Some clauses, however, are called dependent clauses. Though they have a subject and a verb, they don't make complete sense. Each dependent clause needs an independent clause to complete its thought. Now, why are dependent clauses so important? That's what we will look when we continue this section. We'll take a look at that later.